His son's a Mussolini MC. It should be. And I'm going to say, hey, probably I saw this more recently with the motorcycle chariot races. And, in the Roman fashion. Look at this. Ain't that wild? This is back in the 20s and 30s, man. 2 Harleys in the front, pulled by a chariot, dressed like a Roman legionnaire. That's badass. So I was thinking this guy who is of Italian heritage, Hollywood, and the newcomer on the block, Stax, and I don't know what others, but, I look at it like this. One of the biggest things I think why motorcycle clubs are kind of like losing, I don't know if they're really losing their edge or what if you want to call it that. It is because they're not pushing the envelope. Now, long hair and tattoos and all that kind of stuff is not, everybody's been doing that since maybe even the late 80s. People have been jumping on board. They make payments for Harley and they're in there, right? Well, if you really shock the public and you get back to the basics, because you know what? We all know what the problem is. Good old Mussolini with the fascist, which was, the fascisti was like one stick is weak. You could break one stick. But when you got a stick, bundle of sticks, tied together real strong under one leadership, it's unbreakable. That's why strong leaders work well. So, this, if you had this guy, Franco, and the great one, besides, the great one's the most important, that would fix a lot of stuff. Because I know there's like all these undercurrents, it's this, it's that, it's all this other stuff. No, actually, it's the unnameable. So, now, I enjoyed watching, I actually watched both these channels, Hollywood's been around forever. He's the one that really was putting out the biker news when there really was no biker news. And you got more upstarts now. But I think the two I really, really watched, there was Hollywood and Stax. Really, and Biker Bob up in Canada. I don't really watch a lot of stuff, though, and I don't even watch them all the time, because I don't have time for this stuff. I actually do stuff. But I found a lot of his interviews interesting, and this guy Pee Wee, this kind of, I don't remember exactly, but I think he said he had a prospect for a while, and I was thinking, why would he have to prospect a while? I always thought to myself, they're probably too scared to have him in the club, until they figured out he was like a reasonable, personable guy, besides being big and strong and kick your ass, but they're probably a little scared of him. But, if you want to go back to shocking the public, and in a good way, because we all know what the undercurrent is, the power that is screwing us all up from every aspect. You see videos on YouTube about what's going on in the UK, what's going on in Germany, what's going on in France, what's going on in the cities, and they all never say exactly. But, the answer was already there back in the 30s. And without getting too direct, Mussolini would be a good starting point. And it would be a shocker. I mean, that would be pretty cool because this guy, I think he's got Italian heritage, and I know Stax has Italian heritage. Now, they're not, Stax would be the more he's the new guy on the block, as far as this type of stuff goes. And Hollywood's been around doing it a long time, but, sometimes, problem is you probably wouldn't be, they probably wouldn't be paying you anymore if you did that. There's the crux of the problem. But, there's always other sources of income. But I don't want to even say what I do. But, you got to kind of like you can't be somebody who is looking for attention all the time. But at the same time, you got to get out there in public and make people know you have a presence. In other words, you can't be a clickbait type of person where you're always looking you need that dopamine high for attention. But right now, I would think that if you had a Sons of Mussolini MC right now, that would really be. But I mean, you got to have to go through all the stuff and whatever you got to do, but it probably would be pretty much welcomed in the motorcycle community, I would think, and you would attract a lot of Italian American types and stuff like that. And of course, you can have the Franco one and also the other one for the Great One, and then you would realize, really who the cops work for, because if they're against the good guys like Mussolini and Franco and the Great One, you know who the cops really work for, right? Shit would. Anyway. And here's the good old Mussolini right here, so whatever. Just a concept, but it's not that hard to get it going. I mean, maybe not call it a club, call it a social order. The fascista, or whatever, the SOM. I don't know what the fuck you would call it, but the thing is, that would be a shocker. And that's what I kind of liked about the motorcycle scene, is when it got. I am going long under this. I expected to make this 2 minutes long, but what I always like is when you're righteous and you're outside the common mentality, because you know how people are. They got to go along with the trend, or they got to go along with what other people think, because they don't want to look like they're outside the norm. But sometimes you got to be outside the norm to be righteous. And one classic example was they had that sample where the people were waiting around in an office, and the people sitting in the office, they would hear the bell would go off, ding-a-ling-a-ling, and everybody would stand up. So somebody new comes in the office, you're like, what the fuck's going on? But after a while, that new person starts going along with it. You want to resist that garbage. And the people that are really running the show, what they want is they want obedient worker slaves. That's what they want us to be. They want us smart enough to produce for them, but dumb enough that we can't get together and fight them. This is why they don't like clubs, real clubs. And it is true that in my opinion, not having a club background or anything like that, but just being from the outside, like I'm older, and I kind of remember, what the public perception of clubs was. And today it's like a little different, It's not exactly totally different. But, this guy here, Hollywood, he would really tell you the most about that kind of shit. But it's like, we got to kind of get back to that. Almost all Americans, true Americans, do respect the motorcycle clubs. But they kind of respect it from being patriotic and American and stuff. But when I'm talking about, the anti-communist elements that were in Europe, they were fighting the bad guys. We got to be more worldwide thinking, and against the worldwide threat. So, problem is, I don't know how much you can talk about that on this shit. But, trying to make money, the ones that, have the money will find a way to cut you off, right? So, anyway, I just think it's a radical concept, and but it would be something I wouldn't try to put on YouTube, per se. I'm only putting it out there right now because I figure some people might see it, and maybe they'll think about it, and maybe someday they might take it, run with it, and, maybe not exactly what I said, but something along those lines. Because really, we got to do is that's what I'm doing. I don't want to say what I'm doing. I'm kind of like shocking the public. Taking a risk by doing that, but that's what I do. For righteous reasons. For righteous reasons. So anyway, that's a concept. Sons of Mussolini MC. It should be. Anyway, over now.